Wabanabiekna, wabanabiekna, mega the sespela madiek, Bukulada Muja, wabanabiek.
When did we first learn of the archaeological significance of the Debert site?
Personally, I learned about that in 1970 when I was with the Union Nova Scotia Indians. Mm-hmm. They gave me a bunch of books to read, and one of them was George MacDonald's book on Debert. Mm. So that's the first time, but I really never got interested until 1989. A small storm went through Nova Scotia and unearthed several trees, so they gave us a call. So we found, I think, artifacts under these trees that fell. So I called Dr. Peter Christmas, and we also invited Dave Christensen and also Stephen Davies from St. Mary's University. I figured that Stephen is an archaeologist, so he'd know a lot about it. So when he looked at them, he said, look, this is the same stuff that Dr. George MacDonald found in 63 to 65. So right away, I started talking to the chiefs and telling them, look, it's an area where MacDonald did his studies and get his PhD from. We should do something about it. And Tim and I began talking, we should do some kind of protection. So in 1989 is when we took it a little bit more serious. And then we started talking about what should we put there. And so in 2000, we really got earnest on it and started to develop a group of elders. We wanted to make sure that we had people that were educators and elders at the same time. So we sent several letters out requesting them to be part of this. And to our great surprise, everybody said yes. We began talking about how can we better protect Debert? Mm-hmm. What else can we do? So we had Stephen Davies did several test pits in the area, 1 meter by 1 meter, and each time he dropped a test pit, he found some artifacts. Mm-hmm. So we figured there's a lot of stuff there. We got to make sure it's protected. Even though it was a tree breeding nursery, mm-hmm. we had to make sure that it was in our hands at some point in time.
Wow.
You know, and we're fortunate the group that Don has assembled over the past 23 years has provided us wonderful guidance. The first job we had with them was to tell them, we have the opportunity to build a culture center. What is it that you want to happen in that culture center? So we've taken this building from the inside out. We could have built a square box and filled it up many years ago. That wasn't the goal. Our goal was to have them tell us, as I mentioned earlier, they wanted to share our stories. They wanted to protect our past, our resources that we have, both at the Canadian Museum of History, but also at the National Museum of American Indian. But also the collection is at the Nova Scotia Museum, because for a long time they all felt somebody else has our stuff, right? Why do they have our stuff, right? But we're thankful that it's been cared for, but we know the time is right for that to come home. But it can't come home until we know, and they told us this, the elders told me this, until you can properly care for it, just as good, if not better, you know, we won't be comfortable bringing the collections home.
In every meeting, Tim can attest to it, we learn a lot of things. Every meeting we have, we're always coming out of there with new things. And that's the whole way of our people. You continue learning. You're never going to be well educated. You're always learning about yourself and from the elders. You know, that's the most beautiful thing in my life is I've been educated of what I know from my elders. And I thank them.
Unfortunately, my grandparents on both sides of my family passed away at I was, you know, between 7 and 10 years old. So I really didn't have that grandparent influence beyond that. But in my role as the executive director for M'ikmawey Debert and working on the project for the past 25 years, you know, they have given me that opportunity to have that wisdom, those knowledge holders in the room. And when I need to seek guidance or counsel, you know, they're always open to sit down with me and share what they know.
Sure, you can read books, you can read all kinds of things, you can attend classes, but the best classes you're going to attend is to talk to an elder, because it's not only their ideas, it's from their mothers and fathers and grandparents. That's where all the information comes from. It's been passed down through generation and generation.
We've been to the National Museum Cultural Resource Center probably 15 to 20 times. Within the last 8 years, we've been able to take a number of our speakers, a number of our knowledge holders with us. We partnered with M'ikmawey Debert Cultural, our Elders Advisory Council, and really started to look at the collections from it wasn't, you know, what it is, it's what does it do, right? And we've been able to look at the collections differently to say, you know, it's a practice of doing. And now, so we're not just caring for the object, we're caring for the practice of doing, right? And so when we talk with our elders and there's some words in our language that are no longer, you know, the front of their minds, but they're still in the back of their long-term memory, because we just don't use things like we used to use them, right? And so that was a big wow moment for us when we went down in 2018 and 19 to you know, see the elders around the table and just see them light up when they said, like, I haven't heard that word in 40, 50 years, right? So that's what we're doing, Jarvis, is we're reclaiming our cultural resources, right? Because you don't get that information in Washington, D.C. The information is here in communities, and that was proof for them to develop that relationship with us, to say, you're right, the information is here in communities. There's a period in our history where our elders were told their stories are not important, right? We didn't matter, right? We were going to disappear. But they collectively have held on to those oral stories, and our job is to protect those sites. But we can't protect them by being 30 minutes away or 20 minutes away from Debert. We need to be there on site. The center needs to be built in Debert for protection. It needs to be built for us to care for our own collections. It needs to be built for us to tell our own stories.
Did you know about Indian day schools? These were the government's earliest attempts to assimilate Indigenous children. At these schools, children were also abused. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report did not focus on these schools, nor were they part of the 2006 Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement. In 2009, a class action lawsuit was initiated to compensate harms suffered at these federally operated Indian day schools. One of the 6 plaintiffs was a Mi'kmaq, former Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief Roger Augustine. There were about 700 Indian day schools in Canada, operated by various churches. Indian day schools were in all provinces and territories except Newfoundland. A few even predate Canadian Confederation. It is estimated that at least 200 students died at 46 Indian day schools. Documents only show 14% of the schools, so the death toll could be higher. 2 of the earliest Indian day schools were right here in Mi'kmawey. Lestugush before 1864 and Giskebegia in 1864. Some of the last ones to close were also in Mi'kmawey. Whalesong and Eel Ground, both in fall of 1993, and in Sibonagadic, winter 1997. The last Indian day school to close in Canada was in September 2000 in Ganasawagi, Quebec, Oka. In grand total, Mi'kmawey had 22 Indian day schools, 2 in Quebec, 2 in Prince Edward Island, 6 in New Brunswick, and 12 in Nova Scotia. I myself attended an Indian day school, the Waikagama Federal School, from 1985 to 1993.
One of the long-term goals is a center of sorts at the site of Debert. How do you envision what this would look like? What would it be doing for people, visitors, Mi'kmaq, non-Mi'kmaq alike in the territory?
I guess the biggest thing is to re-educate our own people about our history, for them to know all the different significant things that the Mi'kmaq people have provided for the settlers that have came into our territory. There is so much that our people don't remember. So what we're trying to do is rekindle a lot of these things so people will be very proud of who they are. Growing up in schools, all they ever talked about was the European history and how bad we were. We wanted to make sure that our kids are very proud of who they are, where they've come from, and what we contributed to society. Because if it wasn't for Mi'kmaq people helping the early settlers, they wouldn't have survived. So that's what we're trying to do with this M'ikmawey Debert Cultural Center, is to preserve the cultural memory and to pass it on for 7 generations. So, you know, that's our biggest important thing with us and our elders, is that there's a lot that has been lost, but we're slowly resurrecting things that had been lost to today's memories. That's the most important thing, is to make sure our kids know and they're very proud. Because when I went through school, sometimes I was ashamed of being an Indian, the way they portrayed us. But when you look through history the proper way, that's not what happened. So we want to make sure that our kids are very proud of their heritage, their culture, and who they are.
My kids today, Don's grandchildren today, are going to a totally different school. We're having Mawiomis in schools. Our information that we've been a part of researching is now in the textbooks. Stories are being told from Mi'kmaq perspectives. I think that, for me, is what M'ikmawey Debert is going to allow us to continue that research, to bring those stories together, package them back out for people to see, to hear, right? So, and M'ikmawey Debert is going to be a place of doing. You know, we don't want to create a museum-like atmosphere where you're going just to look at things. We want people to be touching and feeling and experiencing the culture, right? Asking the questions, getting the answers, you know, so it's going to be a dynamic center with, you know, we're looking at over 40 exhibits that are going to be within the center.
I absolutely want to see this being built, definitely, much sooner rather than later. And, you know, I think it'll just be incredible for everyone to learn.
And we see people are genuinely interested in the culture, genuinely interested in the history, and you're sharing that information with people. So we need allies like yourself that are going to help share our story, because the more people know about M'ikmawey Debert, because people are going to watch this show, I had no idea, right? But, you know, we've been in this process protecting significantly important archaeological resources that are over 11,000 years old. So we can't, you know, we have to be careful in how we share our information. But, you know, we're looking forward to breaking ground. And we can do that if we get significant contributions to M'ikmawey Debert.
If people have quill work, baskets, arrowheads of any sorts, how could they use them, contribute, submit them to M'ikmawey Debert, seeing that this could be a great place to house them, but there's no facility yet?
It's just not about the item, it's about the connections of that item. It's about the stories, right? And so when I say that, it's like, we can't have thousands of baskets that all look the same, right? And unless those thousands of baskets all have a unique story, right? And so we have to be somewhat careful, and I want to say picky about what we collect. You know, if they can preserve them for now, and when the center is built, we'll definitely have a portal for people to come and share their knowledge. And if they want us to care for that item, we'll be there to help them care for it. And hopefully we'll have, some tips and suggestions for them to care for them from here until we're open.
I firmly believe that our viewers are excited about this. They would want to support it. So the big question is, for Mi'kmaq as well, but non-Mi'kmaq, non-Indigenous people who are watching, they are learning about this, these dreams, these big plans for the Debert Cultural Center. How can they support it? What can they do?
They can donate money to the M'ikmawey Debert Cultural Center.
Mm-hmm. Through our website, we have an online portal that allows people to make donations.
Did you know that the Mi'kmaq districts, Ebikwek, Akbikduk, which is today Prince Edward Island and the lowland area of the North Dublin Strait, is recognized as one district, not two. It was believed that the land below this water was once above water, but after the last ice age, enough water was left to create this island land separation. Nevertheless, as it was recognized as one district, it is believed that the Mi'kmaq name and recognition of this predates the Ice Age. Geologists have also learned that the rocks of the northern Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island formed at about the same time, over 280 million years ago, in the same environment.
The other thing we've seen in the news that's been quite amazing is discussions and works on repatriation of our arts, works, clothing, and crafts that don't just go throughout North America, but they go throughout the world. What role or what part has the Debert organization been playing in the repatriation of these works?
Sure. When Don established the Elders Advisory Council in 2002, they gave us three important areas to move forward with. And one was to share our story. Second was to protect our past, but also to explore our history. So we knew that the Debert collections were being held in Gatineau at the Canadian Museum of History. And we started to build that relationship with the Canadian Museum of History to return the Debert collections. I have some replicas here that they brought to us in 2008, and these replicas they put in front of Don and I in 2008 and says, we'd love to return the artifacts to you, but we just can't do that. But how about you have some replicas? And Don and I both looked at each other and we chuckled and laughed and said, no, we're not here for replicas. We're here for the real deal. And like I said, we're proud to say after 15 years of negotiating, things that happened, as you know, Jarvis, with the recent TRC recommendations from 2015, moving forward, the museum have changed their mindset. And so now when Debert is built, we will return to the 4,600 artifacts that were removed from Debert in the 60s. So, it's been a long story, but we definitely have worked with other partners. The recent news article I think you're referring to is the collections that are at the National Museum of American Indian. Mm-hmm. So we will return through another strong memorandum of understanding with them over 1,400 of Mi'kmaq collections that they have there. But at the time that we became aware of the collections, we were working on a photo exhibit, Let Us Remember the Old Mi'kmaq photo exhibit from 1999, which we followed up with a catalog, a book. And through that book, we were able to identify families and people in those photographs, because when the anthropologist came, he wasn't recording the important information we would have recorded, right? He was more worried about, the disappearance of Native people in North America, and that's what he was recording. And, so we took those images back to the communities, had conversation, and really built up the record, and that we're able to publish this book. And then from that, both Don and I went to Washington, D.C., And they were opening up the exhibit. We had the exhibit traveling the northeast coast of North America here, and Washington was our first opening. And Don and I were there, and you know, two fellows from Millbrook First Nation here, and we're way down in DC and opening up this amazing exhibit. And we got a chance to see the collections that were being held at the Cultural Resource Center. We walked through the Cultural Resource Center. There's over 800,000 artifacts from all over the Americas, right? But we got to see collections that had come from here in the early 19th century and early 20th century. And we were quite amazed, and we said, wow, wouldn't that be wonderful to bring those home? So we've been working on that for the past 2 decades, 2.5 decades. So it's been a lifelong journey so far, and we're getting closer.
The ironic thing is that the reason why anthropologists were here is that in 1842, the Indian agent Abram Gessner said, there's less than 956 Mi'kmaq left in Nova Scotia. So right away, Frank Goldsmith Speck was the first anthropologist to come here. And he was studying the Mi'kmaq Grand Council. And then you had Wallace and Wallace, a husband and wife that came here in 1911 and 12. Then you had Johnson. Then Wallace and Wallace came back in 51, 52. But each one of these anthropologist groups that came here purchased a lot of our artifacts, our traditional outfits. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the National Museum of American Indian and their holdings. When we first went there, it was so significant and so beautiful. It's just like they got it yesterday. They took good care of them. The biggest thing that we added to their collection is to identify where they came from, who made it, and what Mi'kmaq language was used in different fabrics and so on. So, I mean, it's been a really good relationship that we built with the National Museum of American Indian and the Smithsonian. But it was because of anthropologists wanted to study before the Mi'kmaq disappeared.
And we're still here.
We're still here.
It's amazing. And with the items, the crafts and everything, how do we know who may have made what?
Our elders group that we have for Debert identified a lot of the things, remembered who their fathers and grandfathers, what they made at that time. So that was how we even took them to Washington, a couple at a time, to look at all the collection, and they could identify what community was made by, just about who made it. So, I mean, that was the biggest connection to communities. And what we're hoping to do with the collection is that, as it's been shown in M'ikmawey Debert, that we'll also loan it to each one of the communities to show it in each their community. This was made here. So, you know, that was the most important part, is our elders helped us identify.
I think it's the work of Debert sounds incredible, and I'm only just all excited to see where it goes from here. Don, Tim, I want to thank you both so much for your time. So we'll end up. Thank you.
Wabanabiekna, mega the Sespela Madiek, Bukulana Muja, Wabanabiek. Bukulana Muja, Wabanabiek, Bukulana Muja, Wabanabiek, Bukulana Muja, Wabanabiek. Bukulana Muja, Samwayek, Bukte, which are Wabasawayek, Bukulana Muja, Wabasawayek. Wabanabiek, mega the Sespela Madiek, Bukulana Muja.